Narayanam namaskrityam naram shaivanarottamam devim sarasvatim vyasam tato jayam hridayet. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Om namo bhagavate vasudevaya. Good morning, dear devotees. We're here in Sridham Mayapur, birthplace of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and we're coming together every day during this lockdown with our little pod. It means fish. There's some fish are trying to swim in the ocean of Bhakti Ras in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. And we've been reading from 25th chapter of the 3rd canto, which is the teachings of Lord Kapila Dev about devotional service. And so we're on text number 28. We read from this verse yesterday and spoke on it, and we'll probably continue it again tomorrow, I think. We titled this yesterday that Bhakti is for everyone, including women, sudras, etc. It sounds a little bit ridiculous in a sense, but it's actually a question. So, it's not ridiculous to everybody, unfortunately. So it should be. So we'll go ahead and read the verse. Devahutir vacha kachit tvayuchita bhakti kidrisi mama gochara yaya padamti nirvanam anjasan vasnanavaham. On hearing this statement of the Lord, Devahuti inquired, what kind of devotional service is worth developing and practicing to help me easily and immediately attain the service of your lotus feet? Srila Prabhupada writes in a short purport, it is stated in Bhagavad Gita that no one is barred from rendering service to the Lord. Whether one is a woman or a laborer or a merchant, if he engages himself in the devotional service of the Lord, he is promoted to the highest perfectional state and goes back home, back to Godhead. The devotional service most suitable for different types of devotees is determined and fixed by the mercy of the spiritual master. Gauragraganya gana gocha goloruharam Gauranga gudatama gopyara kopa briksham Gopalagada ratidam yati singha gora Govinda deshikavaram satatam namami Vanchakalpadarubhischa Kripa sindhu bhyevacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo namo namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very fundamental principle of bhakti, which Mother Devahuti is bringing out from her illustrious son, Lord Kapila Dev. It's something which seems very simple and innocuous, but actually it's very deep, and the misunderstanding about it is very, very ingrained in conditioned souls. The point is that bhakti is for everyone. Rupa Goswami finds this important enough to speak about in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. In the first wave, 2nd chapter, text 60, he says, Shastrata Shriyate Bhakto. He quotes this verse, Shastrate Shriyate Bhakto nir matrashyadikarita. Savadikaritam bhaga snanasya bruvata yata. Drishtantita vishishtena hari bhaktir nipam prati. He says that this should be understood, a very important principle. The Shastra says Shastrata Shruyate, the Shastra says, Bhakto Nri Matra Shyadi Karita, that every human being is qualified for bhakti. Savadi Karitam. Every human being has qualification for bhakti. Just Magasnana Shibruvata Yata, just as every person can take bath during the month of Magh. The month of Magh is a cold month, and it's said that if you take bath during the month of Magh in a river or lake or something, then you get more spiritual benefit. So it's not that there's signs up there, only Brahmins can take birth, or only men can take birth, women can't take birth, students can't take bath, women can't take bath. Everyone's entitled to take bath. In the same way, bhakti is a proclivity of the jiva soul, and it's open for everyone. This is, we're reading from now Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1-2-60, and I'm going to read text 61. He quotes the Padma Purana. Sarve dikarano yatra hari bhakto nrita yata nripa. Is a verse speaking to the king. It said that everyone, sarvadikarano yatra, everyone is eligible to practice Hari Bhakti. But as we spoke a little yesterday in the story of Dhanardas, and how Dhanardas and his wife, she was a person who was appreciated by many different men, let's just say that. And she's a courtesan, we might call her. And Dhanardas was a wrestler, and not from the highest caste, but Ramanujacharya appreciated him so much that when he would go to take baths in the Kaveri River, after coming back, after taking his bath, he would put his arm on Dhanardas. And some of the brahmachari, Brahman disciples of Ramanuja became envious. They couldn't appreciate the good qualities of Dhanardas, and hearing them criticizing, Ramanuja had a plan, and he, through this plan, he showed who was actually a great saintly person, who was in the material conception of life. So when we're blinded by external bodily symptoms, and we put those things as being the most prominent, then we're putting that before bhakti. Some people, they want to talk, this is a really controversial thing, I hope I don't get hung over this, but some people want to talk about Lady Diksha gurus. I think personally it's a completely nonsense topic. How can there be a Lady Diksha guru? Guru is guru. Whether that personality is Janavamata, the wife of Lord Nityananda, or any of the many lady gurus in our disciplic succession, or maybe that personality is Hanuman, who's a monkey, or is Jatayu, who's a great devotee of Lord Ramachandra, who was born in the body of a vulture, or so many different personalities. We don't speak about American gurus, or African gurus, or Indian gurus, but guru is guru. But persons who are caught up in the bodily conception of life, they think, they try to make bhakti into a religion. And then the nature is that they want to try to say that this is only for certain qualified persons. Oftentimes we cite the example from the Bible in this regard, that when Christ began his movement, the only people who were becoming Christians were all Jews. And Christ himself was born in a Jewish family. And so the first Christians, their understanding of Christianity was that means you have to follow all the rules and regulations of Judaism. And then the people started preaching. And some other outside people, some Gentiles or outside people started joining Christianity. And when they joined, the older Christians began preaching to them that to follow Christianity means you have to follow all the rules of Judaism. And they became a little disturbed about that because they didn't want to follow the rules of Judaism. They came to get the mercy of Christ. And then I think it was Peter, if I'm not incorrect, who finally stood up in an assembly, and he declared emphatically that even we can't follow all the rules of Judaism. So how do we expect everyone else to do so? And this was a very historical point in Christianity. If Christianity would have gone on as it was, then it would have been limited to Jews. But at that point it opened up and it became a worldwide religion. To use this as an analogy, in a similar way, some people could say that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was born in a Brahmin family. And so that Brahmin family, they're following Manasanghita and Smriti Shastras. So only if someone follows all the Smriti Shastras and things can they actually be a Gaudiya Vaishnava. But this wasn't the version of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Indeed, this is not the version of the Bhagavatam, it's not the version of the Nrsimha Purana and other Puranic literatures. In this regard, there's a nice story in chapter 13 of the Nrsimha Purana, which we oftentimes tell. We printed this in the 11th issue of our Krishna Katamrita Bindu magazine. It's a very nice story which illustrates the exalted quality of bhakti and how bhakti is open for everyone, but how there's always people who become more fixated on bodily differences, on rules and regulations, and cultural differences, and they consider those differences to be bhakti. So the story goes that there was one Brahmin whose name is Kashyapa, and he was a very, very pious personality. And he had a wife whose name was Savitri, and she was a very, very chaste lady. Now, prior to all of this, I'm jumping ahead of myself, there was another Brahmin, his name was Yagya Sharma. He lived in Koshala. His wife was named Rohini, and they had a brahmachari son named Dema Sharma. This story is told also in the Mahabharata. There it said that his name was Kaushika, but the details are basically the same. And it's an important point to note that the same story is there, both in the Nrsimha Purana and in the Mahabharata. And this is a very, very astonishing story. Listen very carefully. So this righteous Brahmin, Kashyapa, according to Nrsimha Purana, was doing Nrsimha Puja every day. And, this brahmachari, Deva Sharma, eventually his father passed away. His father performed all the different sanskars for his son. And his son was a very, very staunch brahmachari. So when his father passed away, he looked at his mother and he said, all women are Maya. I'm leaving home. I'm not going to stay here with you. I'm not going to be a mamachari. I'm a brahmachari. I'm a tough guy. As we often try to comment, Krishna and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu are not brahmacharis, but they're mamacharis. They're very, very attached to their mothers. But this brahmachari, Deva Sharma, he thought he was something very special. And so he just left home, and all that he had was one pair of kopans. He was a very renounced brahmachari. And he would go, and every day he would take baths in a sacred river someplace in the forest. And after taking bath, and he would put out his kopans to dry, and he would do his bhajan, his meditation. One day, when he set out those kopans, a strange thing happened. Two birds suddenly flew down and picked up his kopans and started flying away. That was a big problem for him because he didn't have anything else to wear. So he started shouting at the birds. The birds didn't listen to him. They were carrying his kopans away. And then Deva Sharma became very angry. And he glared at those birds. And he was so powerful that those birds immediately, just by his glance, they fell down dead on the ground. And Deva Sharma, when he saw it, he thought, everybody sees that, see what a great brahmachari I am. And so he went and took his kopans back, and later that day, he went out to beg alms. He decided that I'm going to show some mercy to these poor pocha grihastas. Pocha grihasta means rotten grihasta, have a bad smell. We hold our nose. And so he went to the house of one pocha grihasta and he knocked on the door. And the lady came to the door, and Deva Sharma, this brahmachari, held out his cloth, and in Sanskrit he told the lady, Bo Mata Bhagavati Bhiksham Dehi, "Oh Mataji, please give me some bhiksha, give me some alms." And the lady was completely ecstatic. "Oh, this is so wonderful. A brahmachari is here. We can do some service for him." "Yes, yes, yes. Just wait a moment. Let me go get something." And so she ran back in the house to get something. Devashrama was very pleased to see how submissive she was. While she was getting something, it so happened that her husband returned home. His name was Kashyapa. And this Kashyapa, when he came home, his wife forgot all about the brahmachari. "Oh, my husband has come. Please have a nice seat. Let me wash your feet. Let me give you something to eat." Ladies don't do like this in America usually, but oftentimes they do in India still. And she was worshiping her husband, and she forgot all about the brahmachari. And then after some time giving some food and water and things to her husband, maybe 10 minutes or more had passed, suddenly she remembered that brahmachari. "Oh, I forgot." And so she quickly took her plate of rice and different foodstuffs she had for him and took it to him. "My dear brahmachari, I'm very sorry. My husband came home and I forgot all about you." And that brahmachari was so angry. How dare this woman give more respect to her nasty grihasta husband who's living with a woman? Doesn't he know how great a brahmachari I am? And so he glared at that housewife. He gave her the same glance that he gave to those two birds which died. And he glared at her. And nothing happened. She was just standing there with the plate. And again, he really glared at her. And she said, "Look, don't make all these funny faces at me." He said, "If you want it," she told him, "if you want to take something, just take it. Don't think I'm like those poor birds that you killed." And when the brahmachari heard that, he was very shocked. He said, how did you know about those birds? Nobody was there." And that lady, she bowed her head, and with great humility, she said that my husband is my God for me, and I worship him. My husband is a Vaishnava, and every day, according to the Sringa Purana, he's worshiping Lord Nrsingadev. And because of my devotion, my chastity to my husband, I've gotten some potency. I have this trikala gya, and I know past, present, and future. Because I've given complete satisfaction to my husband, who's a Vaishnava, and I'm waiting upon him with love and devotion. And he was amazed. He said, "Well, I don't have powers like that, and you're just a woman, and a housewife at that." And she just kind of nodded her head, and she said, "Listen, if you want to understand, I'll tell you something else. Your father was a Brahmin, and he lived only on taking alms, and you took lessons from him in the Vedas. He performed all the different sanskars for you, and when he died, you performed his funeral ceremonies. And then you ignored your aged and widowed mother, and you left her thinking that she was Maya. You're a complete nonsense." She said, "Now that poor woman, she has no one to support her, while your only interest is how to feed yourself. She gave you birth. She cleaned your stool. When you were a baby, she brought you up with all love and affection. And now you just left her, and you're so proud that you're doing great austerities in the forest. You become a great, great brahmachari." She said, "Aren't you ashamed? What do you hope to gain by wandering around in the forest with your single kopan?" She said, "Because of the suffering of your mother, there's a bad smell coming out of your mouth. And whatever strength and power you have, it's not because of your brahmacharya, it's because of your father, who performed all these different sanskaras for you." She said, "You are an evil-minded sinner in the dress of a brahmachari. And just recently, for no good reason, you burnt to death those two innocent birds. And because of this, all your sacred baths, all your visits to the holy places, all your meditation, everything, now it's useless." She said, brahmachari, that person who sees their mother suffering and in a wretched condition, who doesn't take care of her, he loses all his piety. But that person who gives love and devotion to his mother and always protects her, he'll get all rewards in this world and thereafter. So immediately you should go and take care of your mother. That's your greatest duty. And the Mahabharata gives a little different description of what happened after this. It's a very amazing thing in the Mahabharata, if you're not surprised by this already. In the Mahabharata, the same story is told, but this lady, whose name was Savitri, she told that Devasharma Brahman, Koshika, his name was in the Mahabharata, she said that he was astonished and he said, will you become my guru? Will you give me initiation? He asked, the Nrsimha Purana says that he asked this lady for initiation. And she said, no, I'm not your guru. She said, if you go to the city of Mithila, where Sita Devi is from, there you'll find a man whose name is Dharma Vyada. And this man, he's your guru. You should go to him. The brahmacharis, wow, this lady's amazing. Okay. So he left. And he went to Mithila and he started asking people, do you know someone named Dharma Vyada, some sadhu? People were a little confused. We don't know any sadhu named Dharma Vyada. No, there's a man here named Dharma Vyada. There's only one person in Mithila named Dharma Vyada. He has a shop over there on the corner. Oh, he said, okay. This lady, she knew everything. She was a housewife. And maybe this great personality that I'm supposed to take initiation from, he's a businessman. Okay, maybe. So then he went to that shop, and much to his shock, he found it was a butcher shop. He was completely shocked. Something just short-circuited in his brain. And he was just standing, and finally the proprietor of the shop, he said, excuse me, sir, can I help you? You need something? Why are you coming in my shop? You look like a very saintly brahmachari. We just sell dead animal flesh. I don't think you want anything here. And Devasharma Brahman, he began to stutter. He said, blah, 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 blah. I'm looking for someone named Dharma Vyada. And that proprietor of the shop, the butcher, he said, oh, that's my name. I'm Dharma Vyada. Huh? He said, and I know that chaste housewife Savitri, she sent you to me because you killed those 2 birds by your glance. And the brahmachari became even more confused. How did you know all that? Nobody knows. Nobody was there. Only this woman knew that. There was no internet at that time. She didn't tell her story on Facebook or anything like that. How did you know about all that? And he said, well, I have some potency, I have some powers, I have Trikalagya. How are you Trikalagya? And Dharma Vyada said, yeah, I know it looks pretty bad, doesn't it? Huh? He said, but here in our shop, all we sell is deer and buffalo flesh. He said, personally, I'm a pure vegetarian. Huh? I'm a devotee of Krishna, actually. And he said, maybe you should come home with me. We can discuss this a little further. And the brahmachari was just completely in shock. And submissively, he just followed along behind that butcher. The butcher went home and said, give me a few minutes, let me take a bath and put on some clean cloth. And afterwards, he came to him and he took him to their altar. They had a nice altar where they worshiped Krishna. And this brahmachari just, as we would say in America, his mind was completely blown. He was just shocked. How are you a saintly person? He said, yeah, I know, I have a really bad business. He said, but this is my family business. Nothing I could do. I can't get out of it. Because in India, especially at that time, even today, for a lot of people, it's not such an easy thing to find occupation, to find work. In those days, the work was given by your family. And according to whatever occupation you had, whatever occupation your family had, that's what you would also do. And it was understood that you have a job. That way it wasn't that the government is entirely responsible for that. The government also has responsibility to give everyone occupation, but that came primarily through the family. And whatever occupation your family had, that's what you would also do. And especially in those days, the Mahabharata, the Srimad Purana, you couldn't get out of it. So Dharma Vyada said, yeah, I know it's really bad. He said, but I'm a vegetarian. I don't kill any of these animals. I purchase them from other people and then I sell them, and it's a very nasty work, I know. He said, but afterwards I come home and I offer boga, pure vegetarian things, to the deity of Krishna, and then I distribute that prasadam to other people. And he said, because I'm very, very respectful to my parents, and because I've always worshipped my mother and my father, then I have some this trikalagya, this mystic power that I can know everything. And it's because of that that I knew about Savitri, this housewife Mataji that you went to, and she told her to come to me, and I knew about these two birds that she killed. Right? In the Nishinga Purana, to continue the story from there, he was given some instruction. He said, you should go back after you take initiation, you should go to the land of Koshala, and you should get married. You'll find a nice girl there, born in a good Brahmin family. She's destined to be your wife. And when you come back home, when you go back to your home, her father will offer you to you. You should take her at that time, and she'll give birth to a baby boy who will perpetuate your family. And then she told him, Punarmritayam bharyayam bhavita tvam ridandika. So yatya shramadharmena yatto jaknustitena cha narasinga prasadena vaishnavam padapapyasi. When your wife finally passes away, then you can take sannyas. Right? And the verse mentions, interestingly, tridandaka, the tridandi sannyas, Vaishnav sannyas. And then she said to him, Narasimha prasadena, by the mercy of Lord Nrsingadev, Vaishnavam padapapyasi, when you leave your body, you'll attain the abode of Lord Vishnu. Mm-hmm. So it's not what things look like always. But with bhakti, everyone has some adhikar, some qualification for bhakti. Bhakti by nature is meant for everyone. Srila Prabhupada gave a lecture in 1973 on the 27th of December in Los Angeles, and he spoke a little about this. He said there that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says that Krishna Bhakti, Krishna consciousness movement, may be offered even to the Chandala. Chandala means the lowest of human society, the dog eaters, Chandala. This is the benefit of Krishna consciousness. This Krishna conscious movement can be accepted by anyone. It can be bestowed to anyone without any discrimination, without any discrimination. And that is happening. We have no discrimination that this movement is meant for such and such class of men or such and such nation or such and such country. No, it is meant for everyone. And anyone who takes to the shelter of Krishna consciousness, he is happy. Srila Prabhupada did a lot of controversial things. Sometimes devotees, I've heard, they complain about some sannyasis in our movement because, my God, they're going and associating with Mayavadis, or they're going and associating with the yoga kind of people. But that's what Srila Prabhupada was doing. When Prabhupada first started his movement in New York, he was associating with Dr. Mishra, who was a Mayavadi, and Prabhupada was going to his programs, and most of the time they didn't even ask Prabhupada to speak because he knew Prabhupada would say something that he wouldn't appreciate. But Prabhupada would go there, and Prabhupada would make friends with some of the people there, and he would try to preach in whatever way he could. Years later, when Srila Prabhupada was in London, the devotees remembered that on one occasion, Dr. Mishra visited London, and he came to see Srila Prabhupada. This fellow is a Mayavadi. But Srila Prabhupada greeted him with so much love and affection. My old friend, please sit down, have lunch with me today. Because bhakti is meant for everyone. If we hate people even because of their philosophy, or what to speak of because of their background, or what to speak of maybe because of their sexual proclivity, it can be noted that some people also criticize it, that some senior devotees, my God, how can they be friends with homosexuals or lesbians? But Srila Prabhupada, many of his early disciples were like that. There's Charu Prabhu was I think he was the ashram leader at that time. And as I recall, his name's not coming to my mind, another disciple of Prabhupada, was a temple president, also someone that I know. When one brahmachari, one devotee joined the temple in Berkeley, and Haripad Prabhu, I think, was the temple president at that time. And this devotee put on saffron, became a devotee, shaved his head, and was coming to Mangal Artik every day. And after a few days coming to the morning program, one day he showed up at the morning program, and he was wearing a sari. And the devotees were a little confused. What do we do about this? I don't know. And there was some disagreement amongst the devotees. And some of them were saying, this is not according to Varnashram Dharma. This is not according to Vedic culture. This is very bad. He can't stay. We had to kick him out. And other devotees are saying, no, he wants to be a devotee. Okay, so he likes to dress like a woman. And so finally, they wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada. And Prabhupada wrote a famous letter back to that devotee who was sometimes dressed like a man and sometimes like a woman. And Prabhupada just told him a very simple thing. He said, anyway, just decide whether you want to be a woman or a man. And act accordingly. Prabhupada didn't make a big distinction. And many of Srila Prabhupada's early disciples, some of the most senior devotees in our movement, were gay. And Prabhupada didn't bar them from that. Prabhupada said some strong things against that, because that's the culture he came from, and also Vedic literature says some strong things about that. But Vedic literature also says that bhakti is meant for everyone. There's no discrimination. It's not, as Srila Prabhupada points out in his purport to this verse that we're reading today, that bhakti is only for certain people. Prabhupada says, no one is barred from rendering service to the Lord, whether one is a woman or a laborer or a merchant. And as we were just reading from Prabhupada, even someone may be a chandala. We told the story from the Mahabharata and the Shinga Purana a few years ago at the Bhakti Sangam Festival in Ukraine. And after I finished the class, one devotee came to see me. And he was a very humble person. He had his head down. And he's wearing tilak and shaved head and kunti mala and dhoti and everything. And he said, Prabhuji, this story is about me. And I said, what do you mean? And he hung his head down. He said, Prabhu, he said, my business, I sell fish. I have a fish market. And he said, I've tried to get other work. Devotees told me to give that up, but I couldn't find any other work, and I have a family to take care of, and I can't do anything else. He said, so finally what I started doing, I sell fish, but I don't eat it, of course. And he said, in my shop, I have a bowl of prasadam, which I offer to all the people who come. And I have Prabhupada's books there also. I give Prabhupada's books to everyone. And he told me some people, they criticize me, but what can I do? So what would Srila Prabhupada say? Just like yesterday, someone wrote a comment on our discussion about hospitals. And Prabhupada said some negative things about hospitals. And they said, well, some senior devotees are criticizing some particular devotees of the hospital. And I wrote a long comment. You can see it in our discussion yesterday, if you want. Glorifying the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. And my comment was, I said, I don't know if you're talking about the Bhaktivedanta Hospital, but all glories, all glories, all glories to the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. And first of all, you should know, it's not part of ISKCON. It's an independent thing. And if someone criticizes them, then it means that they don't believe in Varnashram Dharma. Because these are private persons, these are doctors and nurses, professional medical persons who are working in different hospitals where people were eating meat, where everything was very, very nasty, very ugra karma, and they didn't want to work like they wanted to associate with devotees. They wanted to be in a devotional atmosphere. You can't blame them for that. And so then they came together and they started their own hospital. And in their hospital, they like to have a deity of Prabhupada. I'm sorry, I hope that doesn't offend anyone. And in their hospital, they like to chant Hare Krishna. I hope nobody's really deeply offended by that. Yes, Srila Prabhupada discouraged welfare activities in the name of religion, and especially he criticized sannyasis who were doing that. But what is a private person supposed to do if he's a grihasta and he has an occupation? He has to do that work. It's not so easy for them. And in this case, they were very fortunate. They came together. They started the most amazing hospital. Those people saved my life. Several years ago, I had an operation there. The devotees took care of me. They've taken care of so many devotees. And you come into the hospital, it's so amazing. There's a deity of Prabhupada. Every shift that begins, all the nurses and doctors who are starting that shift, they all come together. They stand in a circle around Srila Prabhupada, and they chant Shikshastika prayers and then Hare Krishna. And not all the doctors and nurses and staff are devotees. All the people who cook in the hospital are devotees, initiated devotees, and everything there is prasadam. And they have a system in the hospital. They have a speaker in every room, and there's 3 different channels. One is a local Bhagavatam class, one is a Bhagavatam class recording of Srila Prabhupada, and one is Srila Prabhupada chanting japa. I think it was those 3. And every room, they're hearing this. And then meanwhile, they have a special department with someone, one devotee or a few devotees, they have a cart. It's a moving altar with Jagannath, Baladi, Subhadra, and they go room to room to bless and give prasadam to all the patients in the hospital, some of whom are Muslims. And they have a special department to help people who are leaving their bodies. It's wonderful. I appreciate them so much. But from some external perspective, someone may criticize, and some people do, how dare they do this? Srila Prabhupada said we shouldn't have hospitals. But it's not an ISKCON project. This is Varnashram Dharma. We want everyone to start practicing bhakti. It's not that if everybody starts practicing bhakti, then we're going to decide we're not going to have any more hospitals in the world because now we're all devotees and we don't want any hospitals, right? That's ridiculous. Of course there's going to be Vaishnava hospitals. There must be. It's a wonderful thing. But it's not the business of ISKCON to do. That's the business of private devotees. I had a discussion about this some few years ago with someone, and I told them that they're not ISKCON. They just like keeping Prabhupada. He said they can't keep Prabhupada there. Then they're representing Prabhupada. I said, are you going to try to make a law? You're going to go to the government in India and tell them, please make a law. No one is allowed to keep a photograph of Srila Prabhupada in their home or a deity of Prabhupada in their home unless they're a member of ISKCON? Is that what you're suggesting? That's crazy. Everyone should love Prabhupada. And no matter what person they are, everyone has a right to follow bhakti. And I'd like to close with a conversation from the 7th chapter of Jaiva Dharma, which is a very astonishing discussion. The disciple Yadava Das, he asks his Guru Maharaj, Ananta Das Babaji, a very interesting question. He says, the Grihastha Bhaktas, they follow the Varnashram system. Therefore, is it possible for a Grihastha to become a Vaishnav if he's not following Varnashram? A very good question, very interesting question. His Guru Maharaj answers, if you only knew how liberal and magnanimous Vaishnava Dharma is, if you understood, you wouldn't ask such a stupid question. If you just knew how liberal and magnanimous Vaishnava Dharma is, it's known as Jaiva Dharma, the religion for all living entities. Every human being from any position has a right to follow Vaishnava Dharma. Those born in the lowest statuses of humanity, known as Antyajas, can embrace Vaishnava Dharma and live as Grihastha Bhaktas, although they're outside Varnashram society. Another example, he says, it's a sannyasi, the highest religious order in the Varnashram system, who may break his vows, his sannyas vows, and fall down. Nevertheless, later, by association with saintly persons, he may be reinstated in Sudha Bhakti and live as a Grihastha Bhakta, although now he's an outcast from Varnashram society. He can be a pure devotee, although he fell down from sannyas and got married. He goes on to say, those persons and their descendants who are excluded from the Varnashram society because of unlawful actions, that means all of us born in America and Europe and Russia and China. All those persons and their descendants who are excluded from Varnashram society because of unlawful actions may take up the process of Sudha Bhakti by associating with sadhus. They can become Grihastha Bhaktas, although they have no status in the Varnashram society. That's me. I live in Jagannath Puri. They hate me. They won't let me in the temple. Some people, they move away when I come walking there. Sometimes we've experienced trying to give a sticker of Lord Jagannath to some of these people, and they won't take the sticker of Lord Jagannath because they feel they're going to be contaminated. That's me. I come from such a bad background. And these people who are so strict in their Varnashram society, they don't even want to look at me. And Anantadas Babaji in Jaiva Dharma, Bhaktivinoda says, goes on to finish saying, therefore there are two types of Grihastha Bhaktas, Varnashram Dharma Yukta, those who are within the Varnashram system, and Varnashram Dharma Rahita, those who are outside the Varnashram system. And then his disciple asked the $64,000 game show question. Which of the two is better? The ones, the Grihasthas who are following Varnashram, the Grihasthas Varnashram Dharma Yukta, the devotee who's within Varnashram, and Varnashram Dharma Rahita, the devotee who's outside the Varnashram system. And the answer given is, he who has developed the highest intensity of bhakti is the better. As for those who are in either of these two conditions, but are actually bereft of bhakti, by the vyavaharika point of view, by the materialistic point of view of society, of materialistic society, they'll judge that those who are within the Varnashram system, they're better of the two. Because at least they have some standing in Varnashram society, while the others are untajas, fallen persons. However, he says, from the paramartic point of view, from the absolute perspective of bhakti, they're both the same. Both are degraded because they're without bhakti. Of the two, whoever has bhakti, he says, he's the better of the two. This is our consideration. And this is what Lord Kapila Dev is teaching Mother Devahuti. And because Mother Devahuti comes from this kind of culture where there are some smartas, and there's always been smartas, from the era of the Mahabharata, you had people like this Deva Sharma Brahmachari, who thought he was a great person. You had people like the Brahmachari disciples of Ramanuja who were criticizing Dhanar Das. You had people like those rishis in the forest who are criticizing Sabari. It's always been there because some people who are in the bodily conception, they put more stress on the external rituals. They put more stress on the culture of society. They put more stress on bodily birth and gender. And therefore, Devahuti is asking this very, very valuable and important question. And this is something which runs very, very deep in the heart. We have to see this thing and understand that bhakti is for everyone. So I'm going to stop there. We got a little over time, not so bad. Brajabanita is coming. Sachinanda Prabhu, my old friend from New York, is here. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Sachinanda Prabhu is now in New York City. I mentioned your name, Sachinanda Prabhu, to Naranjan Maharaj the other day, and he was remembering you. Brajabanita writes, you're the first one who also believes that the theme, the woman Diksha Guru itself, sounds absurd, solely based on material position and contradicts our Siddhanta itself. Thank you for noting that. What's the problem? Why do we have to campaign? I'm not saying that the people who are campaigning for Lady Diksha Gurus are bad. They have their reason, and we should respect that. But why do we have people campaigning for it? Why do we have people campaigning against it? Why should there be any campaign? It should just be simple. It's just based on Krishna. Krishna makes a decision, and it's not that there's lady gurus and men gurus and American gurus and Russian gurus or Israeli gurus, Jewish gurus and African gurus. It's nonsense. Madhupati Prabhu, Hare Krishna, Subal Sham Prabhu. So nice to see everybody's coming every day. Alex Prabhu, my basis. Hare Krishna Lynn, I got your message on Facebook. Thank you. I'll write you back when I get a chance. Brajabanit has written something also. Thank you very much for this topic of responsibility for those around us, because in recent years it has become very popular among grihastas when a husband approaches 50 years of age, regardless of the economic condition of the family, debts, or insolvency of his wife. That's a big word for our Russian friend Brajabanita, insolvency of his wife, who devoted her life to caring for family. Her husband leaves to live in the ashram, oh, this is a problem. Yes. And Prabhupada also wrote that Gaudiya Vaishnavas don't have to take sannyas. It's not that it's because someone reaches the age of 50, they have to take sannyas, but that's for materialistic people. But if someone's practicing bhakti and their wife is a devotee, it's a fall down for them to leave their wife. Hare Krishna Mahendra Prabhu, nice to see you. Mahendra is a very learned person. Hare Krishna. So many nice comments from the devotees. Mahendra Prabhu has made a nice comment. Bhakti is a religion of the soul, not the body. That's why all souls can practice. Yes, it's Jaiva Dharma. Aditi, Hare Krishna Aditi. Then about pranams, could you please continue this program even if this lockdown finishes? I can't promise, but we would like to. We like this so much. Our plan is we're not going anywhere for some time. Actually, if you want to know privately, we have a plan to return to Jagannath Puri, but we haven't made any dates because we were told by the government officials in Puri who came to our house while we were gone, and they told the devotees there that when we return, we'll have to be put in quarantine for 21 days. Not at our house either, but in a government facility with a lot of other people. And not to be critical of anyone, but we're not very eager to go and do that. So we're just going to stay here in Mayapur. We're very, very happy. We have Srimad Bhagavatam class every day. We have a very beautiful little pod of devotees here, little fishes. We're trying to swim in this ocean of Bhakti Ras. So I want to stop there. If anybody else has any comments or questions, please write that in. I think you can subscribe if you want. Again, we'll be doing this 5 days a week. On Wednesdays and Fridays, we won't be here. So again, we'll be here tomorrow. And again, we'll take up this same discussion to continue about this verse and how bhakti is meant for everyone. Now I'd like to turn over the microphone to some of the devotees here. Anybody have any reflections or comments? Payani Radha, better known around here as Banana Payani, has a comment.
Thank you so much for this topic, that we continue this, and for the story from the Simha Purana and Mahabharata. It just reminds me, once Madan Mahaprabhu, disciple of Niranjan Maharaj, told that about his relationship with his mother, that when I become devotee, I started to appreciate my mother more and more and more. Huh? No, it's Madan Mahaprabhu. Madan Mahaprabhu from servant. Yeah, he's disciple, but he's sorry. And I really appreciate this point, and I think it should be an example for the devotees. It's really, this is the science of bhakti. If we start appreciate our relatives more, even if they're not devotees and they're doing something strange according to Vaishnava culture, it's really important. Thank you so much. And also, I'm really inspired by this 7th chapter of Jaiva Dharma and this $64,000 question. Yeah, it's really important. And so the best person who developed the highest stage of bhakti, it doesn't matter if he is following Varnashram Dharma or he is not following Varnashram Dharma. And another thought that about Srila Prabhupada, and I don't know if Srila Prabhupada expected something like this kind of strange, for his culture. He didn't saw it before, like woman, man, and things like this. But he just wanted to give bhakti. Doesn't matter whatever they're doing, just please following bhakti process. Thank you so much.
Thank you for such a nice comment. For me, when I see someone like Madan Mohan Prabhu who loves his mother, and I can see in his character he's such a gentle person, that because he has that quality. How can we not appreciate our mothers? It's not human, it's inhuman. How can we not appreciate and want to give bhakti to everyone? I can tell you, when I was in Los Angeles, sometimes we would travel to do book distribution and preaching, and sometimes we would go to gay parades in San Francisco and in Los Angeles. And we would go there to distribute books to people. And some of the devotees, is a little controversial, some of the devotees said, oh my God, you can't go there. But Srila Prabhupada came to America. Srila Prabhupada came to me. Am I so much better than anybody else just because of their proclivity? And I found with those people, there's a lot of very beautiful, wonderful people, like Prabhupada's early disciples. The Mott Street gang, they call them. There's a whole group of devotees, early devotees living on Mott Street, and practically all of them, I think 4 or 5 of them were all homosexual by nature. But they were devotees. And Srila Prabhupada never gave them a hard time for their sexual proclivity. And if we go and if we demand that, first of all, you give up this sexual proclivity, first of all, you start dressing like a man because you were born as a man, you can't do this, many people won't begin to practice bhakti. But on the other hand, someone may be a butcher, as we're hearing the story of Mahabharata, and they can practice bhakti, and they can even become a great devotee. Because there's no material disqualification for bhakti. It's such a very, very important principle to understand. And always there's definitely going to be different cultures of people who don't appreciate homosexuals or gays, or some people, they're going to be fanatical brahmacharis and they don't appreciate women. And we also don't mind them. That's what they need to practice bhakti. That's fine. We're also not going to criticize them. But they don't have a monopoly on bhakti. They don't have a copyright on it. They can't force everybody else that you have to come through me. Bhakti is for everyone. So there's a couple comments from someone named Shrivan Ramjit. He says, I think one reason why female Diksha Guru became such an issue is because Siksha Gurus seem to be marginalized. Siksha Guru does all the work, and the Diksha Gurus seem to get all the glory. That's a fact. I have a number of friends, wonderful Vaishnavas who in the Gaudiya Mutt, and some who are Babajis. And one Gaudiya Mutt devotee, once I asked him, we were taking prasadam at Prabhupada's appearance day program in Vrindavan, ISKCON Vrindavan, and I happened to be sitting next to him. And so I asked him, I thought, let me take this opportunity to learn something from another person. I said, you work with ISKCON and you also initiated Gaudiya Mutt. Please tell me, what do you find good about ISKCON? What do you find bad about ISKCON? What do you find good about Gaudiya Mutt? What do you find bad about it? And he liked the question. He told me what I like about ISKCON is the emphasis on 16 rounds and the morning program. He said, you don't always find that in the Gaudiya Mutt. He said, but what I like about the Gaudiya Mutt better is they give sometimes more respect to the Siksha Gurus than they do to the Diksha Gurus. Whereas in ISKCON, so much stress is given to the Diksha Guru. He says, but in the Gaudiya Mutt, we may give more respect to the Siksha Guru. And Shivan, I have to be quick because my computer looks like it's going to die any minute. I appreciate your talks, even though I'm not able to tune in all the time. Your talks remind me so much of Srila Gaura Govinda Maharaj. Oh, Krishna. But softer in delivery, I'm not quite like Guru Maharaj. Thank you, Prabhu, for your Krishna Katha. Thank you for such an encouraging comment. We're nothing. We just want to try to serve our Guru Maharaj and the Vaishnavas and Srila Prabhupada. So thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. I have to turn off now. Vanchakalpatarubhishcha kripa sindhubhye vacha